Good evening and welcome to the Washougal City Council meeting for Monday, August 12th, 2013. If you would, please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the Constitution of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Rose, could you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Boger.
Here.
Councilmember Polinsky.
Here.
Councilmember Greenlee.
Here.
Councilmember Lindsay.
Here.
Councilmember McDaniel.
Here.
Councilmember Shoemaker.
Here.
Councilmember Freeman.
Here.
Thank you. Are there, under amendments to the agenda, I have one item that I would like to place, which is utility cost of service discussion immediately after the first public comment period. Are there any other amendments to the agenda? Okay. Hearing none, Rose, is there any correspondence this evening?
No.
You're at that opportunity for anybody from the public that would like to address council to please step forward and do so. Okay, seeing no one, it's not your last opportunity. We do have another one in the agenda a little bit later. Going then to utility cost of service. We did have a workshop meeting just prior to this meeting starting at 5 o'clock that went till about 6:30, in which pretty much the entire topic was on our utility cost of service and some of the options that council has in front of them in regards to some of the revenue scenarios. Dave, do you want to, yourself and Karen, bring us to where you want to go at this point?
Thank you, Mayor, Council. Where we left it this afternoon was needing to get a recommendation from the council, or direction, I should say, from the council regarding whether or not the system reinvestment horizon would be 5 years to reach the goal or 10 years to reach the goal, understanding that the rate horizon is 5 years in either case. There was also a 20-year system reinvestment time frame that was presented, and the recommendation is either the 5 or the 10, and we pointed out the different implications of those two. The only other comment that I would make, and then if Karen has anything else to add, part of the conversation started to center around what the difference to a bill might be between doing a 5-year versus doing a 10-year, and I think for the purposes of conversation, that's fine to look at that. We just want to make sure we are clear again in the caveat that that would only be accurate if we do an across-the-board thing with the rates and we don't do anything with customer classes or make any changes based on the cost of service study. That that difference may not be in reality what the differences would be, because there's more effort to be done under the cost of service analysis. But it is informative in a general sense to try to illustrate the difference for the current rate structure that you have, which is the one that you could compare it to. I don't know if I said that well, but
Yeah, I think that covers the analysis.
Okay, so given that, where we were getting to in the workshop is literally getting down to, it sounded like the 20-year option is out, getting down to a 5-year reinvestment or a 10-year. And it sounded like from the comments from council that it was pretty close to a split on there. So before we move forward and have FCS go through and start doing that work, I want to make sure that we've got some clear direction for them. Dave?
Can I get a clarification? I believe the recommendations were different for each of the categories, stormwater versus or water versus sewer. One was 5, one was 10.
Currently, we're looking at water and sewer, and the recommendations were either 5 or 10 for either one of them. I think some of your internal discussion was about diverging between water and sewer. I didn't have a particular recommendation of 5 years on one and 10 on the other.
Okay.
For clarification, where you originally started out in that original study it was 5 years for sewer, 10 years for water. Your current financial policy is 10 years for both.
Okay, that's where I got it. Thank you.
Is there a motion that anyone from council would like to bring forward so we can bring the question to the table?
Move that we consider the 5 and then the 10-year escalating.
What does that mean?
Choose one and,
You can consider one right after the other? Am I wrong in that?
I think I'm just looking for a vote on the 5-year, and if that doesn't, or the 10-year, and if that doesn't pass, a motion for.
I move
vote
for
on
the
other.
5-year then.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Go ahead, Karen.
I've got a motion and a second to put forward the 5-year scenario. Council discussion. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Roll call?
Councilmember Boger,
No.
Councilmember Plinsky,
Aye.
Councilmember Greenlee,
Aye.
Councilmember Lindsay,
No.
Councilmember McDaniel,
No.
Councilmember Shoemaker,
Aye.
Councilmember Freeman.
no.
Okay. Motion does not
I move
carry.
that,
Is there a second?
Mr. Mayor, I move we look at the 10-year.
Second.
Okay, I've got a motion and a second for the 10-year. Council discussion? Paul?
I did this as fast as I could, and just as the motion was made, I have the number. At the end of 5 years, with the 5-year plan, the total increase is 14.1%. With the 10-year plan, it's 14.7.
What does that exactly mean for?
That if the present bill is $184.94, including a $14.48 rate reduction, that disappears for 14 and all subsequent years. So that amounts to almost an 8% increase. If you then take the water increase at 3.5% each year over the 5-year plan, 3% over the 10-year plan, 2.5% each year for the sewer plan 5-year, and 0 for the first 3 years, and then 2% for the last 2 years for the sewer 10-year plan. Roll those numbers all in, and the present 2-month bill is $184.94. At the end of 5 years, with the 5-year plan, it's $211.09. That's a 14.1% increase. At the end of the 10-year plan, it's $212.17. That's a 14.7 increase. So it's a total increase. There's not much.
I only reluctantly challenge a MIT alumni.
Well,
But,
I did this in a hurry. So
well, I would actually like to see that a little more definite before I would go with the 5-year plan over the 10-year plan. But if those numbers can be verified, well,
And again, keep in mind, the numbers mean absolutely nothing if you're going to do something to the cost of service.
Exactly.
If you do something to the that's
Right.
only if everything stays the same.
right. And that's the only way we can compare it, really, because we don't know how the cost of service is going to turn out. I think 10 years is the status quo, and I would just suggest that we maintain the status quo. And if it turns out through the course of the study that it is going to be a fairly minimal impact like that, I would be open to looking at the 5-year.
Do you have a comment?
Just that, we have to see that rate, whether that, I can't even say what, I don't know how to say it. We need to see the study on how it will affect, how changing those rates will affect this outcome. We have to choose one or the other, and I would like to choose the 10 and see that. I'm expecting that rate change to impact this quite a bit, which is why I went with 10.
Any other questions or comments from council? I've got a motion and a second. This is on the 10-year. Okay, roll call vote?
Councilmember Boger,
Yes?
Councilmember Plinsky,
No.
Councilmember Greenlee,
No?
Councilmember Lindsay,
Yes.
Councilmember McDaniel,
Yes.
Councilmember Shoemaker,
No.
Councilmember Freeman.
Yes.
Motion carries. 10 years. Thank you, Karen.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for indulging us.
Drive safely, stay awake.
Karen, is there anything else that you need from council this evening?
No, that's all I needed, thank you. And I'll go prepare the cost of service analysis.
Great, thank you. Moving next to our consent agenda this evening. The consent agenda consists of 5 items: your workshop minutes of July 22nd, 2013, your council minutes of July 22nd, our special meeting minutes of August 5th, your regular accounts payable claims in the amount of $287,597.87, and Agenda Bill 32-13, an agenda bill setting a hearing, public hearing for medical marijuana collective gardens moratorium extension. Council?
Excuse me, can I, is this the proper time to pull something?
Mhm.
Item F, I'd like to,
We don't have an F.
the agenda, the medical marijuana,
Item E?
the medical marijuana, am I looking at the wrong agenda?
E.
E, okay, that's right.
Okay, item E is pulled.
The one I have has the lower part of the E kind of blotted out, but
Mr. Mayor, I ask unanimous.
Looks like an F.
That we approve the consent agenda as read with the deletion of item E.
Hearing no objections, so ordered. Mitch, Agenda Bill 32-13, setting a public hearing on medical marijuana collective gardens moratorium.
are we doing anything with 502?
If it pleases the council, could I address this agenda bill during my presentation later under new business? I have a whole thing on I-502 and medical marijuana. I'd be happy to go through that.
All right.
Okay?
Okay. Takes care of our consent agenda. Moving on to new business, Agenda Bill 33-13, a public hearing regarding amendments to the Transportation Improvement Plan. Mr. Dunn, good evening.
Good evening. Good evening, council and Mr. Mayor. Tonight, staff is requesting to have a public hearing inviting public comment regarding the addition of the Jump to Guard Safe Routes to School project to the 6-year Transportation Improvement Plan. Including the Safe Routes project to our TIP will fulfill a requirement that we need to qualify us for the grant funds to complete this project. And the recommended action tonight is to open a public hearing, read the resolution by title only, pass, post, and publish in the usual manner.
Thank you, Jim. With that, I will open the public hearing and ask for any members of the public that would like to speak either for or against the updates and amendments to the Transportation Improvement Plan to please step forward to the microphone. Second call for any member of the public that would like to address Agenda Bill 33-13. And this is a final call for any member of the public that would like to address Agenda Bill 33-13 and amendments to our Transportation Improvement Plan. Okay, I will close the public hearing. Council?
Mr. Mayor, I ask unanimous consent that the bill be read by title only.
Hearing no objection, so ordered.
A resolution establishing a 6-year transportation improvement program ranking.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we pass and post as in the usual manner.
Second.
Got a motion and a second to pass and post the resolution in the usual manner. Any council discussion?
Yeah, can we see the map? Is it possible to see the map? Is it available? Reason being is, remember I talked about it last time, because I live right down there, so I got on my little scooter and drove down there, and I was really concerned about where that sidewalk comes out. And I know this is an engineering thing. I just want you to give my opinion to the engineers.
Okay.
Because I'm highly educated in engineering. But I'm a mother, and I've worked with children my whole life, and I know the nature of a child, especially a middle schooler. I'm really concerned that the sidewalk's going to come out. We're going to suggest that they hang a left and go down the sidewalk and then cross. Right?
Possibly.
I know it's a possible.
We could cross at the intersection there
I
as
feel
well.
so strongly that crossing right where that sidewalk comes out would be the priority, because that's what a kid's going to do,
If
for safety reasons.
the map as drawn is not a design, is that correct?
That's correct.
In fact, what we need to do is approve this so that we can get the money to do a design,
That's correct.
which would decide where that goes. Thank you.
Yeah. I would just recommend that you all go down there when it comes time.
Do you want to wait for him to find this, or do you want to meet
No,
individually
you
with
don't
staff?
need to. Are you all, David, you can chill.
Okay. Okay. Any other council questions or discussion?
Just go down there.
I've got a motion and a second to pass and post the resolution in the usual manner. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Jim, thank you very much for continuing to dog that grant.
That's a good thing.
For folks in the public that may not be familiar with that, and I apologize we didn't explain it better as we went through, this is a Safe Routes to School grant that we received to help kids traverse much more safely from the Sunset Ridge neighborhood area to Jemtagard Middle School. Basically, it provides the city with $600,000, give or take, in free money in exchange for about $5,800 worth of staff work on the project. So, good thing for the kids that are in that neighborhood and going back and forth to that school. Okay, that brings us to Agenda Bill 34-13, Resolution on Low-Income Assistance Programs. Jennifer.
Good evening. As you recall, as part of the 2013 budget, we put together the fund to come up with a program to assist low-income emergency situations for utility bills. We did a lot of research and met with the Clark Public Utilities individuals and kind of tailored it after Operation Warm Heart. I had a presentation at the workshop on July 22nd that explained the program. And the one item that's for follow-up that I had was I contacted MRSC regarding the flow of approval and having the Finance Committee give the approval for who receives the income or assistance. And then they said that that would be fine and legal and within your bounds. And then they recommended that the actual dollar amount come forward kind of like the payables under consent for full council approval. So that's how we're proposing the program. Would be initial application with finance. We would forward that information for those that qualify to the Finance Committee. Finance Committee would approve. We would make those payments, and then like payables, it would come forward on consent. Just in dollar amount, we wouldn't have the details of who actually received that assistance, just for confidentiality purposes, for full council approval. So the recommended action, the resolution that's included in your packet, will cause all of this to occur, and we will be able to assist folks with the next shut-off, which will probably be this week or next week. So the recommended action is to read the resolution by title only and pass and post the resolution in the usual manner.
Mr. Mayor, I ask unanimous consent that we read the resolution by title only.
Hearing no objection, so ordered.
A resolution establishing the Emergency Utility Assistance Program.
I move that we pass and post the resolution in the usual manner.
Second.
Got a motion and a second to pass and post the resolution in the usual manner. Council discussion?
You brought up last week the question about the $250
Weeks ago.
2 weeks ago, being used as a one-time thing only. Are you going to discuss that? Are you going to address that for us?
We left the program as we made our initial recommendation at the one time of up to $250 in a 12-month period, solely based on research of how other communities do it. We're already being more generous, as most communities do it once in a 24-month period. And if we tailor it to an ongoing up to $250, it becomes more of a subsidy versus a one-time emergency assistance. So that would be our recommendation, would be to leave it as a one-time emergency assistance program.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was just wanting to see opinions, but
Paul?
This is an arcane question for the city attorney. When Finance Committee makes that determination, is it ministerial?
I would say probably yes, if it's based on criteria that's been established.
Thank you.
I don't think you're gonna say, well, okay, well, we're gonna do it for this guy, but not this guy. Well,
There's no meter that you can point to and go ministerial or discretionary. I haven't found it, at least. I'd like to.
no, it's not that, but it'd be based on established criteria.
For the people for the public, the issue ends up being one of liability for the city. If you're making a prejudicial decision, you open yourself to liability in ways that's not true if it's ministerial.
Any other council
Well, the
questions?
one question I have, and the criteria is basically Clark PUD's criteria, right?
Correct. It's based on the low-income emergency assistance program that they have there. And it would probably only come into play if we didn't have enough funds to fund all of the requests, would be my expectation.
Okay, thank you.
Dave?
I realize that I'm going to be in a distinct minority on this one tonight, but I find it difficult to support this particular measure. And I appreciate the work that the staff's done. I know it's been a lot of work. The reason I can't support this is I have serious reservations about the city participating in charity work, and that's what this is. I think that we were established, and our charter is to provide basic municipal services for which people pay. And I don't think we should be in the business of paying for the effort to provide those services. So I'm going to vote against this one, and I think I'm going to go down in flames on this one tonight.
Okay, Joe?
can I address the question as to what, we've already set aside, what is it, 90,000?
What was your total amount? 95?
95.
95. I don't disagree with you at all. I line up with that same opinion. What would happen if we were to say, we're not in the charity business with that $95,000 that we already voted to set aside?
Go right back into reserves?
I just today heard a story about Davy Crockett.
Excuse me, it doesn't go into reserves. We funded that out of our late payments and.
Correct, so it would go back to the utility
Late
fund.
payments, That's right.
And again, just to remind council, the expectation is that community donations would be the source of the revenue in the future to support the program, not additional city funds.
Paul?
I just want to mention that both on a statewide basis and a county basis, there are, I'm searching for the right word, and I'm going to use the wrong one, abatements on property tax that are based on age and income and veteran status. People who qualify pay a lower property tax than we do, and to my mind, this is similar.
Brent?
And the Washington Constitution, of course, has an exception for the gift of public, poor and infirm, for the gift of public funds rule. So this is something that is not new. It was thought about in 1889 when we adopted the state constitution. So I don't have a problem with doing it.
Dave?
In response, Paul, I'd say that's an interesting point. And Brent, I would not take issue with what you said because I'm aware of these exemptions. And the question I would ask is, we may, should we? Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, I've got a motion and a second to pass and post the resolution in the usual manner. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No?
No.
Motion carries.
I startled you. I have to have you listen to this story about Davy Crockett.
Okay, that moves us to our discussion items. First one, personnel policy updates. Jeanette.
Okay, Council, Mayor, from time to time, as you know, I bring forward policy changes. Some are mandated, some are internal policy changes, so that's what I'm bringing forward to tonight. And Dave's scrambling, trying to pull up the PowerPoint that I wanted to walk through it, but basically walks through the cover memo to my packet that was included in your Dropbox. So let me begin by saying that the first group of changes are mandatory changes affecting our FMLA policy as well as our EEO policy. Should I hit my notes? You got it? Okay, great.
It's connected over there. There's a connection issue there. There it goes.
Okay, so how do I find it again? Right, stop. Okay, so I've got 3 update categories for you today. The first being the federal or state laws that are recently changed. The second item is a consolidation of existing standalone wellness policy into the wellness chapter of our personnel policies. And the third category is to incorporate language that eliminates redundancy and inconsistencies between Chapter 2A of our personnel policies and other sections of a similar topic. Okay, so the first category and policy under the federal and state laws is the FMLA. This change became effective March of this year. Primarily clarified the caregiver leave for military personnel. The updated policy in your packet, basically what I did, when I originally included the military leave, it was on further review a bit disorganized, so I've reorganized it, included the change in the law, but there are no substantive changes to that policy. I would like to point out to Council that an updated packet was included in your Dropbox just before the meeting. I had re-reviewed side-by-side comparison, the 2008 and the 2013, and there were a couple of areas that I had failed to include, and so the policy that's in your Dropbox does in fact include all those changes, and I apologize for that oversight. The next policy is the EEO statement. This was primarily to include the GINA, the Genetic Information and Non-Discrimination Act, that took place several years ago. But upon review of that, realized there were a few other items that should be included, those being civil union status, place of birth, and citizenship, and a correction where amnesty has been corrected, where ancestry was included in the past, in the current policy. Okay? The second area, as I mentioned, is the inclusion of the wellness, the gym membership that was included in a wellness program that Council adopted back in 1993. This piece has not been included in our personnel policies, in our handbook, and that provides for $20 per month, up to $20 per month for reimbursement for gym membership dues. So this would incorporate that policy as adopted back in 1993. However, what I have added is a minimum, a maximum period of reimbursement, 3 to 12 months, and also included the annual practice of the Regents and Kaiser Health questionnaires. Okay, so the third change is to create consistency within the personnel policies. First recommendation is actually to strike 208 longevity pay, as it's redundant with 2.A.2. Just moves that over and into that section, strikes it where it exists, so we don't have the duplicity. No substantive change there. Strike for sick leave 702, 703, 704, as they're redundant with 2.A.04. However, in doing that, there is language in 703 that's not in our 2.A policy, so bring that piece in, so it is all-inclusive. But again, there are no substantive changes to what we're doing there with the sick leave policy. The last two areas, vacation policy, again, strike the language in 8.02. I got some mistakes there. Okay, so 3 sections of the vacation, again, incorporate that in 2.A06, and added language there that wasn't existing, similar to the sick leave policy in our collective bargaining agreements, and also include language to cover the one non-exempt position that we have covered by 2A, allowing that position to participate in the vacation buyback identical with all other employees in the city. And the last change is under our benefits section, 2.A05. Separate out the dental piece from the vision. The dental piece is to clarify the practice that we have with the Willamette Dental and employees that choose that benefit option. And secondly, separate out the vision piece so it has its own section within the policy.
I have a question.
Yes.
Yeah, can we go, I just have a quick question. Why do we pay for the gym memberships again?
Well, this was a policy, as I mentioned, that council adopted back in 1993. It was felt that, again, enhanced our wellness policy for encourage employees to participate, you know, athletically, if you will, and providing $20, up to $20 a month for that benefit.
And that's any employee, not just our firefighters?
Yes.
Which
yeah.
would be
Any
good for
full-time
them
employee.
job.
Any full-time.
Interesting. How many people take advantage of this?
Very few, actually.
Can you estimate a cost to the city on this charge?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I would say it's probably less than 10. It's again, I'm going from Jennifer and in talking to her about the policy, so $2,500 a year.
And does this contribute to our discount for our insurance rates?
No.
Okay.
No.
The wellness program.
The wellness program.
does.
The wellness program has certain criteria that we have to meet in order to do that. If we meet that criteria, I suppose indirectly it could, because we do have programs during the course of the year that influence that, but not directly, no.
Is this a budget line item somewhere in our budget?
I believe it's included in each of the department budgets.
Oh. How much do we budget for it, and are we budgeting maybe too much?
I'd have to come, I'd have to come back to you on that one. I really, finance question.
Thank you. Sorry, put you on the spot.
I remember asking at the time we studied the budget last year about this specific thing, and I was told it was something that we do in order to qualify for the discount. That was the response I got.
No, the context of that question was the wellness line item in the HR budget.
Mm-hmm.
There is a line item for our overall wellness program in the HR budget. And that investment is part of helping us qualify for the Well City Award.
Right.
This is an operational expense that's been in department budgets since 1993. And we don't have high participation. So it is not required to get the Well City Award. We're not proposing any change. All we're doing is, this is a cleanup document, and Jeanette's been working on cleaning up a number of different documents, and one of the things that we noticed is there's a standalone policy. This policy that she summarizes on the slide is a standalone policy the council adopted by ordinance in 1993, and we felt because it was wellness related as a cleanup item that we ought to just include it in our wellness chapter as opposed to it existing as a standalone policy. So we're not proposing that you change your current policy. It's the policy of a previous council from 1993, and it's been in place since that time. We're just proposing that you include it in the wellness chapter of your document.
Joyce?
How many full-time employees do we have in the city now?
82.
How many? 82?
Dave?
May I move on to another topic? Have we exhausted this one?
For now.
As long as it has to do with the personnel policies, yeah.
Absolutely. I noticed in the new items added to the statement on equal employment opportunity, I was surprised to see citizenship in there. Do we hire non-citizens?
We could, as long as they're legally able to work in the United States.
And that would be my next question. We check on that.
Absolutely.
Okay.
E-Verify.
Thank you.
I'd be in trouble if I didn't.
Other questions, other comments for Jeanette? You'll have this coming back to council?
2 weeks.
2 weeks?
What page is that on about the club, the gym?
Page-
See, within the packet that's in the Dropbox, so it would be in the second section behind gym membership reimbursement. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Jeanette.
Thank you.
Moving on to Community Development Department updates. Mitch, good evening.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. Thank you for the opportunity to come before you to give a department update on community development. And I've officially been in the position now since February, so about 6 months. We'll dive into it and let you know what we've been working on and what we're looking forward to working on. So the first thing I'd like to talk about really is what we're going to talk about, and that's getting into the who, the why, and the what of community development. I also will go then into our work plan and then open it up for any questions that you may have. So first of all, the who. We are a department of 6 people. I have the pleasure of serving as the Community Development Director, and we have 2 divisions, the Building and the Planning Division. Within the Building Division is Joseph Lehman. He is our building official, building manager, and he works with our inspector, Tom Watts, and our permit technician, Teresa Guys. On the planning side, I'm very happy that we have a planner now, Jessica Hersig, and she's been here about 6 weeks, and she's doing a fabulous job for us, so I'm very happy to have her. And I'm always happy to have Sarah Kasewicz as our administrative assistant, does a fine job for us. So small division, only 6 of us, but we have a lot to do. Why do we do it? I went back to our city council work session, or excuse me, our retreat at the earlier of the year, and this is a slide that Director Forsberg had about general fund, and we were talking about mandatory areas of what we have to do. And so I thought it was a good place to start. And on the community development, obviously we have the building code compliance, we have environmental regulations, annexations, planning commission, hearing examiner, assessment of impact fees, land division, zoning, obviously, Growth Management Act, which I'll actually spend a little bit of time on, comprehensive plans, zone changes, and construction engineering. That lists it, but I really wanted to give you the why. And so I'm not going to go into all of these, but those are the state laws of why we do what it is that we do. So the what. I'll start with building, and as kind of our mission statement for building, and this is from our website, is the building vision team of the Washougal Community Development Department are responsible for receiving building permit applications, assuring contractors are properly licensed, reviewing plans for compliance with the Washington State Building Code, routing applications to other departments for review, issuing permits, performing inspections, and maintaining construction records. We strive to understand and properly balance our role as a regulator versus facilitator to focus on positive outcomes rather than bureaucratic processes. I think this is a very good statement. It can be difficult sometimes when you are a regulator to be a facilitator, but I think our building division does a very good job of working with everybody within the community to get their project through. Now, not that long ago, you got an update from Administrator Scott, was from Chief Swinehart, Chief Mitchell, and myself that had some information about midterm. And I thought I'd build on that a little bit, give you, that was a January to June. I'm going to give you another month's information within that, but because I wanted to point out some things as well and have the opportunity to do so. So I'm going to take advantage of my time here. You'll see that, again, we still don't have any new commercial construction. Commercial construction, when we tally it, it has to be issued. So we do have, you may have heard, we have Building 15 in the port that is in. It's being reviewed. It will be issued this month, but it's not issued yet. That's why it doesn't show up yet. Last year, we had one new commercial construction building permit, so we're at least going to hit that as well. And hopefully we're going to have more down there, especially within Steigerwald. The rest of the information, pretty much the same. We got a couple more tenant improvements, but you can see last year in the month of July, it was a pretty busy month as well. We had 6 other tenant improvements on the commercial side that came in as there. So we're still, tracking a little bit behind, I think, in commercial activity, but like I said, we do have some that's coming in, and hopefully there will be more behind that. On the residential permit side, it's a different story. Even from last month, now we are at 49 single-family permits. That's out the door. That is exactly what we did all of last year. It was 49 single-family building permits in 2012. So we've already hit that mark. We have, as I understand now, as of last Friday, we had 2 more that went out the door, so we're at 51. We have 22 that are in for plan review right now. So they are working hard on getting those and ready to release. There's 8 sitting in the drawer ready to go, so people just need to come in and get. So that's really tracking very well.
Are those housing tracts done by contractors, or are they just individual homes?
They're houses, yeah, in a residential building permit for a house.
But they're not necessarily, I'm just asking, are most of those in housing tracts, like New Tradition House went up all at once?
Yeah, these would be on existing lots. So there have been some contractors that have pulled multiple permits. I think, handful of some, but the others are lots that maybe have previously owned by the bank. Now that they working with contractors, getting those released, building to suit, and but they're just individual homes on lots.
And we don't have any way to know whether these are pre-purchase or built on spec.
Not really. I mean, we know if they're coming in there, it's an owner build. Obviously, we know that's what's going on, but we don't know what the behind-the-scenes financing, if someone has hired a contractor to build for them, or typically, we know the ones that are larger that are pulling 6 permits at a time or something along those lines. Yeah, there is some spec, yes, you bet. So, yeah, you know, it's only up from there. And as I mentioned, 22 sitting on the board right now. Tom is working hard to get those out, so we are definitely on a much higher pace for residential construction, which I think is pretty consistent with the economy right now. I think we're seeing the residential side picking up there. In terms of other permits, again, irrigation, mechanical, plumbing, these are up a little bit again, but no major jumps, if you will, from that extra month. But again, consistent with activity picking up on the residential side. Obviously, inspections would be up. There's more homes. We're inspecting more. Again, Tom's not in the office doing plan review. He's out running around the field doing inspections for everybody. So we're running him like a dog. But he's a hard worker, and he does a fantastic job. And you can see the 83 plan permits, plan reviews. That's reflective of the ones that have come in.
On that last slide, it talked about mechanical. What is mechanical?
Oh, and that would be your HVAC systems and your heating, air conditioning.
Electrical.
Yeah, we don't do electrical. That's done with the state. Yeah. In terms of valuation, I think this is consistent with what I shared earlier with the lower numbers on the commercial side, but the higher numbers obviously on the residential side. The jump in the July to from where we were last year at just over 7.5 million to now at 12.9. It's interesting. The 8 permits that came in last year, their average valuation was $325,000 for each of those. So that side is definitely picking up. Hopefully, that commercial will kick up after that as well. I wanted to spend a little bit of time on the building code effectiveness grading schedule, and I profess that I know very little about this, but as a director, I'm very happy about this. Sean mentioned this late last year and when it came out, but I wanted to spend a little more time on it and really kind of repetition for emphasis here. And the building code effectiveness grading schedule is performed by the Washington Surveying and Rating Bureau, and it's a schedule that evaluates building codes adopted in a community and the community's enforcements of those regulations. It particularly emphasizes building code requirements designed to mitigate losses and from natural hazards. The concept is simple in that communities with effective, well-enforced, and up-to-date building codes should demonstrate better loss experience when a catastrophe strikes. And then, in theory, insurance rates can reflect that. So it starts with information is gathered from the building community, from the building division. They look at administration of codes, plan review, and the field inspection. And they really look at the people in that and the training that they have and the certifications that they have, the building officials' qualifications, public awareness programs, and staffing levels. And all those things go in, and it creates this scale that you can fall on. The Washington Surveying and Rating Bureau, then they take all that analysis and they give it a 1 to 10 for the community. And the classification of 1 represents exemplary commitment to a building code enforcement, and a 10 indicates basically no recognizable building code at all. Insurances can then use the grading schedule classifications for insurance rating and underwriting purposes, generally offering lower premiums in communities with better protection. And so, again, 1 being exemplary and 10 being basically you don't have anything. And this is, I know it's hard to see, but this is nationwide numbers here, and you can see that a lot of people fall into the 4 and the 5 category. And Washougal, we are a 2. And as Joe likes to say, we are a 2-, because we were probably that close to being a 1. And I think this just goes to, again, to Joe's qualifications, the building, you know, the Teresa at as a permit tech, Tom as an inspector, and those guys doing a fantastic job of the building enforcement of that code and within our community. And you know, I can't say enough about it, and I think that this really shows how good of a job they're doing. And as director, I'm very happy about that. Moving on to planning, again, I know a little bit more about this one. The Planning Division, again from our website, represents the public interest by promoting systematic deliberation regarding the development of Washougal. This is achieved by encouraging economic development, designating appropriate land uses within urban area, implementing design standards for Washougal's physical development, and conforming to Washington State's Growth Management Act and the city's comprehensive plan. So similar to the building update, I did the same calculations for the January to July calculations, and you'll notice on the type 1s, they jumped. We had 7 more since in last month, and then 2 more in the type 2s, and so that's 9 new applications in the planning side last month alone. So if I haven't said it already, I'm very thankful that Jessica is here as our planner, and I couldn't be happier about that, because 30 is the number, similar to the single family. 30 is all the permits that we did last year on type 1s, all of last year, and we've already hit that now again this year. So again, this can be, you know, you need site plan review before you go to get a commercial building thing. So I'm hoping that this isn't kind of indicator that people are getting their things up front and moving in order to do some more building. The type 1, type 2s, and type 3s, your type 1s, again, are your administrative variances, boundary line adjustments, site plan review type 1s, your sign permits. The type 2s are short plats, type 2 site plan reviews, any of your environmental reviews, and then type 3s can be appeals or conditional use permits or subdivision. And again, that's what Jessica deals with day in and day out, and that's the day in and day out of planning. The type 4s, those are code amendments, plan amendments, or development agreements. I will continue to work on those, and I still continue to work on those, along with other items, you know, coal trains and BPA towers and whatnot. But this is, you know, I see our activity level on the planning side picking up and keeping pace with building as well. And so it's nice to be fully staffed again after 3 years. Now I'm going to spend a little time with Growth Management Act, and the reason why is that the county is taken off on this, and you will probably, when you're out and about, be hearing about it. We are required by state law to update our growth management plan, our comprehensive plans, by June 30th of 2016. And as I mentioned, the county has already had a work session on this. I was in attendance at that, along with other directors. And so I want to just kind of give you a background on this and what we, and I think you'll see that how the other departments within the city, divisions within the city, fit into this. So the GMA, the Growth Management Act, was adopted by the state in 1990, and the legislature found that uncoordinated and unplanned growth, together with a lack of common goals expressing the public's interest in the conservation and the wise use of our lands, pose a threat to the environment, sustainable economic development, and the health, safety, and high quality of life enjoyed by residents of this state. It is in the public interest that citizens, communities, local governments, and the private sector cooperate and coordinate with one another in comprehensive land use planning. So we deal with that through the GMA requirements, and this is RCW 36.70A, and if you have a hard time going to sleep some night, just pick this up, you'll be fine. But what it talks about, we have legislative findings within there, which I read from partially. We have the public participation requirement. We have mandatory element requirements, which I'll spend a little time on. Coordination and consistency, obviously we need all that to be consistent, not only locally, but then with the county and the state. And development regulations. Our development regulations that we have in place need to be consistent in the implementation of that plan. So spending a little time on mandatory elements, diving a little bit deeper into 3670A 070. We have land use, housing, capital facility plans, utilities, transportation, economic development, park and recreation. Now, 4 of these may seem strikingly familiar to you, and it should be from this slide that Director Evers had in his presentation to you not that long ago when he is working on capital facility plans, utility, transportation, park, and rec. This just shows that all the work that goes into that one document of our comprehensive plan, that there are multiple departments working on and bringing that together. And we all strive for that consistency. And he even noted it at the top there about consistent with the map and the descriptive. It's not coincidental that land use is at the top of this list, and there's a whole lot of reasons, and I'm not going to go into all of them, but in the preamble for the mandatory requirements, it states the plan shall be an internally consistent document and all elements shall be consistent with the future land use map. So this is our map. This is our comprehensive plan map. And this is what we look at, and what we look at as part of updating. All plans then need to be consistent with this. The land use, the housing, the transportation, the capital facility plan, all of those need to feed in, and they're all tied to this map. And so it's this map that we are going to look at, and the county has already started. This is a slide that the county had at their presentation. You'll see the board work session at the very bottom there, as they titled as the first step. You'll see that local jurisdiction work is like the third to the last. Obviously we want to be more involved in that and be involved a little earlier on. And so I met with several directors from other municipalities, and we have talked about, obviously because we need to have a consistent document. Our document needs to be consistent with the county document. And so we want to be involved earlier than later, and so we will be chasing that. And that's part of what I will be working on in the coming months, is chasing that to make sure that we're in compliance with the state. So my work plan, just real briefly, if I didn't mention it already, GMA update, on or before June 30th, 2016. That will be an effort and a process, and so if you have any other questions as we move through that, please let me know. Building records retention. Our building department's looking at, obviously we need to comply with state retention records, but we need to get that organized a little bit better, and so we can not only, I think it's commercial plans, we have to keep the life of the building plus 10 years. So even if it's demoed, we have to hang on to plans for even longer. So we have a finite amount of space in City Hall, if you didn't know that. And so we're bursting at the seams with plans in some cases. So we're looking at ways that we can maybe shrink that down a bit and still be in compliance with the retention records requirements. Shoreline Master Plan update. Your Planning Commission has been working diligently on this, and they are nearly done, and I hope to have a draft done within the next month, and then that will be back to you in the coming months. So we need to get that updated as well. More miscellaneous code amendments. Councilman Shoemaker and Councilman Greenlee had made comments last time when we had some changes. Those are on this next round of changes. I have some other housekeeping stuff and whatnot that I want to get through and get through before the end of the year as well. So that's a priority in addition to everything else. Town Center Phase 2. This is something I'm really kind of excited about, in that our town center, our core is our phase. If you look at what we've done, really, and you can, if you want to classify it as Phase 1 with the downtown improvements, the tunnel could actually be included in Phase 1, Reflection Plaza. Obviously we're still paying for Phase 1, you all know that. But we want to look a little bit further down the line and look further east, and what that continuing of that town center design would look like. We're working on some mock-ups, we're working on some language, and we want to engage the people within the town center, the residents as well as the businesses, to come together and have a discussion about what we need or what we want as we move from Washougal River Road all the way down to 32nd. You know, that in turn includes transportation, land use, and uses in general. And so I welcome that opportunity to bring that together and bring that forward to you. And marijuana, Initiative 502 and Collective Gardens. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on that because I'm about to spend a whole lot of time on that. So that's all I have, and if there's any questions.
Questions, comments?
Find this exciting?
I do. I do find it exciting. Yeah. I know, everybody else is falling asleep, but I'm wide awake now.
Paul?
I just wanted to mention that at the RTC meeting, Regional Transportation Commission meeting, this planning phase was discussed briefly, and there was a general encouragement for us to go back to our local jurisdictions and have our planning staff get in touch with the RTC staff.
Yes.
I will warn you that they're in a bit of a transition, that the executive director is leaving and will be replaced at some point.
Good to know.
And anytime I go to an Association of Washington Cities event, there's all sorts of vendors who would like to bombard me with information about how to do a better job of records retention. I have a file of that kind of stuff. Are you interested in it?
Absolutely.
Or should I just?
I would pass it on to Joe, but absolutely you can bring it to me and
Okay.
definitely take a look at it.
That's all.
Mitch, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
At least for that piece.
Yes.
Medical marijuana collective gardens moratorium extension. And I-502 and everything all thrown together.
Thank you again. I'm going to touch on both of these items, and again, what we'll discuss here, I'm going to start with Initiative 502, and then I'll move into collective gardens. And you notice I've got this big black line between the two, and that's purposeful in that these are two separate issues that we need to address individually and separately and within our city. And so I have separate agendas or separate action things that we need to look at, but I'm going to just dive into it, and we'll go into Initiative 502 to start. So obviously we all know state law. Washington voters approved Initiative 502 in 2012, and what it says is that individuals 21 years of age or older are legally authorized to possess and use marijuana, related paraphernalia, and any combination of the following: an ounce of usable marijuana, 16 ounces of infused product in solid form, or 72 ounces in product in liquid form. Also, it's law that if you have any greater quantities of that, you're breaking the law, and if you're under 21, you're breaking the law. And just as a point of note, all of this is still in violation of federal law.
Quick question, that 16 ounces in solid form is by volume, not weight. It's not correct. I'm just curious. This is just a question, and I know you probably don't know the answer.
I know I don't know the answer to that, but I can find out exactly.
I'm sorry.
This is a test.
Yeah, no, that one I don't know off the top of my head.
That's like brownies and things like
Yeah,
that.
that's the solid form that it's infused with.
I'm glad to know that you don't know.
Yeah.
Used product in liquid form. What's that?
Your guess is good as mine.
I have no idea.
I can find out, because there are some regulations about this. What the initiative did, it did task the Liquor Control Board with developing regulations, and interestingly enough, that the draft rules are supposed to be adopted this Wednesday. I'll get a little bit into the timeline from the Liquor Control Board in a minute here. But what it sets up is 3 licenses are available, and there's production, and there's no limit on the number of production licenses that they'll issue. There's processing, again, no limit on the number that they will issue, and then there's sales. Sales is limited. It's a formula that they have. It's based on population. I imagine it's probably similar to what they've done in the past related to liquor. There's also some at-large licenses that will be available that will be a lottery system. That's about the extent of what I know about how they're going to disperse those licenses. It also talks about location criteria, and I think that that's what, for us, that for you, that you're looking at. The board may not issue a new marijuana license if the proposed licensed business is within 1,000 feet of the perimeter of the grounds of any of the following entities. The distance shall be measured as the shortest straight line between the perimeters of the proposed licensed location and the entities listed below. So then we have elementary, secondary schools, playgrounds, recreation center facility, child care center, a public park, public transit center, a library, or any game arcade where age is not restricted to 21 or older. We need to look at the definitions a little bit, and especially perimeter. Perimeter means a property line that encloses an area. You remember, so that's 1,000 feet from perimeter to perimeter. So if you have a lot and it's the property line of that lot is 1,000 feet from a public park, but your building is 1,300 feet, you don't get it. It's perimeter to perimeter. That's what they measure by.
And it's in a straight line.
And it is a straight line.
Through buildings.
Through buildings,
blocks.
through lakes, through anything. Playground means a public outdoor recreation area for children, usually equipped with swings, slides, other playground equipment, owned and or managed by a city, county, state, or federal government. And similarly, a public park means any land for the enjoyment of the public having facilities for rest and recreation, such as baseball diamonds, basketball court, owned and or managed by a city, county, state, or federal government. And I'll explain why that means something. This is a map that, again, I'm very thankful that Jessica's here because she did this when she was in Battleground, and she came here and she did it for me. So this is a map that shows anything in the yellow meets that 1,000-foot criteria. And so if you're in that yellow, based on our reading of the definitions, you would not be able to have one of these licenses issued to you by the Liquor Control Board. You'll notice particularly the Port and Steigerwald are absent from that. If you add those in, that's what your map starts to look like. The reason that I didn't add the Port into the yellow is, if you recall, it was city, county, state, federal government. It's not a port. I've asked MRSC this question, and I've asked the Liquor Control Board. MRSC came back and basically said, if it looks like a duck and quacks like a duck, then it's a duck. But I don't have that definitive answer from Liquor Control Board, and they're the ones that are going to make that determination. The MRSC felt that Steigerwald actually met that criteria.
Yeah.
There's restroom facilities out there, there's trails out there. They felt that it would meet that. I have been approached by members of the community about who are looking at property for Initiative 502 licensing. And one of those people told me that Steigerwald, that the Liquor Control Board told them that Steigerwald was not going to be considered one of those things. I asked if I could have that person at the Liquor Control Board who they spoke to. The person was nice enough, gave that to me. I emailed them. I have not heard anything back from them yet. So I don't know. So there's a little bit up in the air. Now, and it's important to remember that this is the Liquor Control Board's call about the 1,000 feet. They're the ones that say if you're within 1,000 feet or not. This is our mapping and showing the best indication that we have of where you would be able to do that. Obviously, if the port or if Steigerwald is included, that pretty much negates our entire industrial park. You'd have a little bit of industrial land just south of SR 14 and east of 32nd. And then you have some commercial area along C Street in this area over in here that would be eligible for the businesses.
Just a couple of observations. If I draw a line 1,000 feet from Captain Clark Park, it extends considerably to the east of where your line is.
Going back to this one?
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, so
And-
it goes
and-
around and,
And then on the port, on the west end, there is a marina park there. where it's the bright blue,
Uh-huh.
there is a park there.
But it's port-owned. That's the issue. We don't own it. And that's where that definition comes into
Okay.
play. It's your county, state, federal government, city. And that's why I'm seeking the definition. You also notice that the blue, I had Jessica utilize the 200-foot that the port acquired for the future trail in there, and I extended off of that as well, that if, in fact, that's the determination, and then that pretty much kind of negates that majority of that corner there.
And then how about the dog park?
Dog park is not owned by city, county, state, or federal government.
It's maintained.
It's not owned. There is a now I said that. I said maintained.
Owned and or managed.
And that would also apply to the
That's
soccer
a good point,
fields.
Sean. If I can go back. Oh, well, now I went back too far. Owned and or managed. Owned and or managed. Yeah, I don't know if we manage it.
Dog paw.
Yeah,
Well, how about the soccer fields?
we
Those would
maintain.
certainly fall under there.
Do we manage those?
Mhm.
We do, yeah. So that's although that's pretty much already taken out with everything else that we have there. 'Cause we have a daycare that's downtown as well, and that may extend a little bit further east, but into this area here. But if you recall, that
Exactly,
perimeter, that property's already out based on perimeter.
It's a side question that has nothing to do with anything. Do we know why, with this coming under liquor control and the things that liquor control normally has as automatic exclusions, why churches aren't included in this one?
Just the state statutes.
Yeah, they just, yeah. Here's a timeline. Again, I mentioned that this Wednesday, the board, Liquor Control Board, could adopt the rules. I haven't heard anything about whether or not they will or not. Again, the effective date for the rules would be September 4th, and that is when they would begin accepting applications for the licenses that I discussed. And the rules wouldn't become effective, they were complete until December 1st. Really, the first thing that you could see based on the regulations and the licensing and the monitoring, you can't be growing stock now and have it ready to go by December 1. You basically have to start December 1, and so you probably won't see anything until the first of the year on the production side. And it's a few months in order for it to grow. Again, that can change too. It can move to the end of the month, and there's some caveats there that the Liquor Control Board has. So next steps, I thought I'd let you know kind of what's happening elsewhere as it relates to Initiative 502. I've had some discussions with other directors. Looking at the production and the processing as just straight industrial uses, and they're allowed in the industrial zone based on all the other regulations that you have currently in your municipal code. Same with retail, that the sales portion of it is a commercial use, and you would allow those in your commercial districts. What we heard really early on from Liquor Control Board is treat them like liquor stores when it comes to the sales portion of it. Again, that's their recommendation, and that probably would be the least, or makes some sense to it, as production and processing is industrial, and then your retail is commercial. I have had discussions with other people in a much larger city within our jurisdiction that I won't name, but that they haven't had this discussion yet, but they're looking at the full gamut of either presenting to their council full-on moratorium against it, or allowing it, or something in the middle ground of allowing the production and the processing to occur within the industrial districts, but have a moratorium on the retail portion of it until things kind of shake out and see what they would do.
What do you mean by full-on moratorium?
Not allow them at all.
Is that what Camus is doing?
Camus is a little different, and I won't pretend to totally understand how they are going about it, but as it is explained to me, they have one sentence within their code that basically says they don't authorize any uses that are a violation of federal law. So, but it's almost like a don't ask, don't tell. If you come in and say, I'm doing a retail business, they're not going to ask you specifically what that retail business is, and it could be an I-502, and they will permit it and run you through. But if you say, oh, well, we're marijuana, then they're going to say no, because they're going to point to that other section of their code that says they can't do it. I don't know, from a legal defense how that's going to shake out. In looking at this, and remember this is different from collective gardens, and I'm keeping these separate. My recommendation would be to treat processing and production as industrial, and treat sales as commercial, and leave it at that. I'd be interested in what council's action would want to be, and that's why I'm really asking. We have until December 1, so if there is something that you want me to look at doing and going back and implementing or putting into place, I need to run that through Planning Commission, I need to run that, and then back to you guys for adoption. What's the discussion?
What could they mean by producing and processing is unlimited, but sales is limited?
Locations and permits.
Look, the licenses.
Oh, the permits.
The license, yes, that's,
So supply and demand, I mean, how does it work in free enterprise system? You grow all you want.
They have some population formula.
yes, they have a population formula on the sales side of it, and then again, some at-large that will be a lottery system as I understand it.
I have a quick question about that don't ask, don't tell policy over at Camus. What if they issue a permit and then they end up being within 1,000 feet of the regulations that are set by state law? Aren't they a code?
Well, in
city?
theory, the person that's applying for the commercial or for the business should not get a license from the state because they're the ones that are looking and saying, you're 1,000 feet from a daycare or you're 1,000 feet from a park, therefore we're not going to give it to you at that location.
Okay.
So it's not, an individual.
So it starts at the state level.
Yes, the individual doesn't come to us and say, hey, can I use this property? And I'm going to say, now I have this map, I can say, well, this is what I have. But you got to, and then in those areas where it's like the Port or Steigerwald, they're going to run to the state, and the state's going to have to make that decision. And we have an opportunity to comment on that. And so we would, they would say how we feel about certain things, and we would do that.
I admit I'd given more thought to the collective gardens than the 502, but it seems reasonable to me that production and processing are industrial processes. And in fact, they're high-risk processes. And that it makes sense to have zoning requirements that say you can't see what's going on from the street, that you have to have 24-hour security, that no consumption on premises. If they were making Ambien, there wouldn't be any consumption on premises. If we restrict all of those to heavy industrial zoning, do we still have the heavy industrial category?
Yes.
That's a smaller portion of the port industrial area than.
Actually, all the property that the port has is heavy industrial. As it stands right now, the only we do not have light industrial within the city right now. We only have heavy industrial.
Well, but for example, the Hamilton property is highway commercial, is it
Correct.
not?
Mm-hmm.
And there's none of the property that fronts the 14 that's highway commercial in the port, in the east area?
No. We have town center. There's nothing highway commercial there.
And I was, at least for the medical marijuana, for the collective garden thing, it made sense to me that distribution would be limited to heavy industrial, no consumption on premises.
Well, we'll get into that one.
But what I'm doing is, all I'm saying is I hadn't really thought how that might apply to 502, but it seems to me that a lot of that does apply.
And I think that it's important to, what I'm talking about is when I say processing and production is industrial and
Right.
Commercial is, or the retail portion is in commercial. I'm not saying there shouldn't be other standards. There are other municipalities as it relates to 502 that have already, or excuse me, as collective gardens that have already done work that say what has to happen in that. If you're in an industrial building, it'd be more like, special use requirements related to Initiative 502, that we'd have higher security, we'd list out all those things, lighting, whatever, and registration, all that stuff would still have to occur. But that's that, and I think that still would occur. I'm just looking at it in a concept overall of industrial commercial.
And for example, I forget exactly what we call them. I think the phrase is adult businesses are restricted to heavy industrial zoning also.
Correct. With a whole litany of issues and things that go along with that, even.
And so it is in fact possible to restrict the commercial, the sale to heavy industrial zoning. I know we can't, can we even prohibit it outright since it's a legal business?
Well, that's more of a legal question, but you could, but then you would have ramifications that you would probably have to deal with. But you're right in saying that we could say that we'll allow sales even within our industrial district and none within the commercial. We can just say we put it all in the industrial zone. Say sales is allowed there as well.
I would love to have the Planning Commission discuss this early and bring forward to us their discussion long before, if necessary, long before they come to any conclusion or recommendation.
Okay. I can do that. Go ahead.
Can you reiterate
Yes.
what Canvas does with the fact that thank you, that they don't allow businesses that violate federal law? Then you made a comment about somebody could get in by not telling the full story?
Yeah, the way it was explained to me is that if I come in for a site plan in a building, I'm going to build a building and I'm going to do retail sales, and all I say on the application is retail sales. They will process that and move it through. You'll pay your impact fees. You'll do everything you would do as a normal retail business, but then that retail business would
But then,
marijuana.
when it's discovered that it's marijuana and it's breaking federal law, what's the
I do not know that.
ramifications?
I do not know that.
And how do we go about getting that in our own policy? Because I think that's a great approach.
And I think that what you're asking is, you want to look at taking the direction that Camas has and basically just saying, we're not going to do anything, we're not going to issue a permit for anything that violates federal law. I understand that. I think that the concern that I have about that is I do not stick when they come in and say it's retail, I'm going to say, what are you selling? And every time, Jessica is going to ask, what are you selling? And if they tell me that, then I'm going to be in a position of saying no. And then that is then the action that we as a city would be liable for a suit, that we are prohibiting businesses under Initiative 502.
If you bookend the policy choice that's in front of us as a community, every community is facing this policy choice, and there'll be leaders that will stick their necks out, if you would, your colleagues, who will do different things, and some dust will settle, and there may be some cases, and I just don't know if that dust is going to settle in time for these decisions to be made. But if you were to bookend your policy choices, one side would be to say, you know what, we don't care that the initiative passed. We're going to just say the federal law prohibits these things, and we're going to zone it out of the community, and we're going to prohibit it and list it as a prohibited use, and then we'll take our chances. And somebody will come after us and sue us, and I don't know what would happen. There's quite a bit of risk in that, and it could be costly, but that's one end of the bookend. The complete other side of it is you treat it just like any other business. It's irrelevant what they're selling, and so industrial is industrial. It's in the industrial zones. Commercial is commercial. It's in the commercial zones, and notwithstanding the 1,000-foot limit, that would keep out some of the properties. It wouldn't be allowed in our neighborhoods and in our apartment complexes and in our condo complexes and at our assisted living facilities, because there you can't do commercial businesses there. We could say it's not a home occupation. You couldn't have a retail outlet as a home occupation. That
Most of them weren't.
yeah, that would perhaps be the
business.
other bookend as you frame the policy
Do 'em
choice.
all.
Another one that could be done, and Mitch says that there are some that are looking at this, but there could be consequences legally for this as well, and that would be to call time out, do a moratorium, and then let other communities stick their neck out and see what happens. And then there's this other one where you kind of just go, we don't care what you sell, because we're not going to issue a permit, therefore we don't believe we violated the code because we haven't issued you a permit, but you have a license. Camas doesn't have business licenses, so they wouldn't have issued a business license. We do, so we license you for what you're doing. I don't know that their option is real viable for us. It's a way to not violate the federal law overtly because you don't issue the permit. That doesn't mean those businesses wouldn't exist in their community. It would become a code enforcement question. Would they enforce federal law or that standard in their once they open shop? And it would sort of be a disservice to someone to say, don't tell us what you're selling.
Wouldn't it be the feds against them, though, instead of the city?
Well, Camas has a provision in their code that says nothing that violates federal law is permitted, so they can enforce that. But yes, that'd be the other point. So we need to continue to survey the landscape to get the best ideas from others, to see if they get tested in any way and see what the implications are. In the meantime, we'll be shopping it with our planning commission. We'll talk to them about what it is. But if you have any general sort of comments or thoughts about it, we can let the planning commission know what those are.
And the city of Kent has prohibited them. They prohibited the collective gardens. They actually shut down collective gardens that they already had. Now, again, that's collective gardens, not 502, but they have put their neck out there, if you will. City of Pasco, I believe, did it as well on Initiative 502. I believe that Kent is in a lawsuit, and so we may know more, but I don't have that answer for you now. Yeah, time will tell. And when I talk to MRSC, all of those lawyers are basically sitting back and waiting for someone to put a big bullseye on them and run out in front and see what happens and run it all the way up. And so I'm just trying to prevent it from being Washougal that does that. Yes, I want to be a little lower.
Be the test case.
Yes, I do not want to be the test case.
I'm curious how Washougal played out in the vote
Renton did that.
on 502.
Pretty dang close.
Dead even.
Yeah.
Ugh.
No, slightly, like with less than 10 votes ahead.
How many showed up for that?
2012 election, so that was probably an 85% turnout.
So I'll take it back to Planning Commission, have that discussion, and I'll just come back at a work session with you and kind of tell you what their thoughts are and what they're leaning before we go too far down the line of doing anything related to that, but I'll bring it back to you.
Just one more thought. There were two couples here that had to leave. They wanted to be able to speak on this issue, but have children at home. And as he left, I asked him what he was here for. Well, we wanted to speak to the issue of marijuana. He said, I've been taught my whole life, just say no. Now they want to bring it into my community while I'm raising children. And they were irate that it would be considered, so I just wanted to share that on their behalf since they couldn't stay.
Yep.
Just say no.
Thank you for keeping us from being on the bleeding edge on this one.
You don't want to be standing in the front line?
Paul?
Yeah, if there's one thing that I think we really, really, really should avoid, it's being a test case.
And I'm not done. I still need to go through collective gardens too, so
Right.
I want to, if you have, I think I got my direction. I'm going to take it back to Planning Commission on the 502 and again, keep my feelers out for what else is going on in other communities and just keep you up to date as best I can.
Vancouver's going to propose an interim official control and not a moratorium on this, Mike.
They're going to do a what, Brent?
Interim official control, which is like a temporary, it's not going to be banned, this is going to be a temporary ordinance in place that controls it.
Yes.
It's a little different from the moratorium.
Yes, and well, and that was in my discussion when I was saying the larger city that wouldn't be named, but is it's the moratorium is one end of the spectrum, just letting them go is the other, and what they're looking at least the recommendation from Chad is that, you know, they have that, they turn it loose in the industrial, but the commercial, they hold the line on.
Just for clarification, we're looking at a moratorium on 502?
No,
Okay.
no, I'm not.
So-
I'm just bringing you up to speed on I-502
Okay.
and what I know now and what is happening elsewhere related to it. Again, the licensings will you can start applying for licenses in September, and the regs should be hopefully this week, and then December 1, possibly December 31st, depending on Liquor Control Board, is when those licenses will actually be issued, and we'll know where. And that's when we should, if we're going to do something, we should have something in place by then.
Thank you.
I think the moratorium is a good idea so that we don't get hauled away in cuffs by the DEA. But at what point do we have to fish or cut bait on the moratorium? When do we have to actually make a decision?
Well, yeah, I mean, we could do a moratorium. It could be an emergency moratorium just before December 1, similar to what we did on Collective Gardens, when the first one that we did. We just did it, enacted it
Is
immediately.
your question, Dave, if we can continue to do them for the next 30 years?
Yes.
No. And I think that if you, I'll get into it a little bit more with 502, but, and why I feel one way about this and why I'm different and why I think, what I think about Collective Gardens, but maybe that's just a good segue into Collective Gardens, if it pleases the council.
Run with it.
Yeah. So medical marijuana collective gardens, again, repetitive a little bit. State law in 1998, Initiative 692, made the provisions for medical marijuana. 2007, that law was expanded, and then in 2011, state legislature passed Senate Bill 5073, which it was majority of it was vetoed by then Governor Gregoire, but this is where we got collective gardens. And that's where we have been under moratorium ever since July in 2011. We had ordinance 1706, and then a year under 1710, another 6 months under 1726, and then where we are today with 1735, which is set to expire on September 4th. Now, there's a couple of reasons why I think that we should continue the moratorium as it relates to collective gardens, and that is. From the legal standpoint, it appears that under 502 that the Attorney General's office is really taking a hands-off approach right now. That's all we hear from Liquor Control Board, that they're having discussions, but they're kind of taking a hands-off approach. They haven't really taken that initially with the collective gardens, but and so I still have some trepidation about when we're talking about federal law under Initiative 502. But when it comes to collective gardens, I have to look at what the state did. And when they passed the budget this year, their appropriation for the Liquor Control Board was about $66 million. 2.5 of which is solely for the implementation of 502. And then the rest is this, what they have to do, and they have to come up with an interaction of medical marijuana regulations and the provisions of Initiative 502. And at a minimum, the recommendations must include in all those things, but authorizing requirements for medical marijuana, collective gardens, location requirements, and strikingly similar requirements for medical marijuana producing, processing, and retail licensing. And so and this is all supposed to be done by January 1 of 2014. So the state has appropriated money to Liquor Control Board to really look at medical marijuana. And this is what I've said all along, that what we were hearing from the Liquor Control Board was, if you haven't let them out of the barn yet, don't, because we're probably going to look at it. They look at it as the wild, wild west, in their words, and they can't work together. You can't work with a regulatory process that has taxation of 25% at each step of the process and then try to compete with medical marijuana. And so, right or wrong, I'm just saying, this is what they are looking at doing and tasking. And so I do not want to open the door for the collective gardens for something that I'm going to turn around and who knows in less than 6 months. And I'll be honest with you now, if it's not done by March of 2014, I may be back in front of you asking for another extension to get this, to make sure that this work is done. So that's kind of my take on the difference between the two. But what's happening elsewhere, the county full-on prohibits them. They adopted an ordinance that prohibits them in the entire county.
Unincorporated county.
Unincorporated Clark County, yes. And so, and again, like I mentioned, there's Kent and Pasco. There's other municipalities that have done that as well. So they kind of painting a little bullseye, but we'll see what happens there. My recommendation into you, and that was what was part of the agenda bill that you're setting the public hearing and what we'll be discussing in 2 weeks on the 26th. My recommendation is to extend the adopted moratorium an additional 6 months. The ordinance itself recognizes a contradiction between federal and state law. It recognizes 502, and it's not another emergency ordinance, and it'll just extend until March 4th, 2014. So on the 26th, have that hearing. We can hear from the public and take action from there. But that's my recommendation on that. Oh, yes, and I'm sorry. And because you did pull that, thank you. Because you did pull that item, you will need to set that public hearing.
Other comments, questions for Mitch? There were raids in Seattle yesterday on medical marijuana facilities. I don't know whether it was DEA or Department of Justice. Have you?
I haven't heard that, no. The other thing that, there are currently about a dozen initiatives to the legislature relating to cannabis and running the gamut from raising all those limits up to it's not a crime to drive under the influence of marijuana. I mean, it's just everywhere. And so, I mean, this is such a moving target at this step, and that the fact that that money has been appropriated to them to look at it, to me, it just doesn't make sense to go down and do that effort in developing regulations. Now, I didn't mention that Vancouver, they do have regulations for collective gardens. They have in their industrial district. That's where I think I'd copy a lot of the security requirements and everything related to that. But they don't permit it. They basically just require person to come in and register with the Community and Economic Development Director.
And that's so they can keep track of the distance requirements.
That's all they do.
Although the city wouldn't care, only the state.
Yeah,
We wanted to, I participated in those discussions actually, and we just wanted to know where they were. Because there are some distance requirements.
I would think you'd want to know where they were too.
Yeah, but we actually considered it because, one of the reasons that Governor Gregoire line item most of that bill is she didn't want to have state employees in a position where they're violating federal law,
Well, that's-
Exactly.
issuing permits, and, you know, the city, we didn't want to do that either.
Nope.
Right.
I don't think we want to do that for Washougal
Nope.
employees.
Well, and that, depending on where council decides to go with this thing in the end, I'll tell you now, I'll have a difficult time with this. And we adopt these, correct me if I'm wrong, through ordinance.
Yep.
Or the zoning.
Yep.
And unless, between now and when we do something, unless there's letters that come out from the Department of Justice and from the administration and the federal level that says, we are not going to step it, not going to say we're not going to rate it, but if we do, we're not going to arrest your police officers for allowing it, your community development directors for permitting it, on and on and on. I'm likely to veto the ordinance. If you all want to go ahead and override that, feel free to do
No.
that, but I'm going to be in an ugly position that I don't believe I'm going to cross the line of saying, I'm fine with you putting in an ordinance that potentially has our staffs, regardless what departments, being arrested by federal authorities for allowing it.
Oh, no, that's, you know, that's absolutely unacceptable. That's the reason that we created the moratorium in the first place. The situation has not changed. And you know, I don't see that there's any problem at all in renewing the moratorium for another 6 months. I would bow to a legal opinion to enlighten me, but unless there's overriding legal reasons to not do that, that seems to me like, why are we even talking about it?
Well, it has to be a public hearing, and it has to be findings of fact. So that'll be, if you allow for the public hearing next meeting, then that'll be addressed, but I don't know of any legal reason why it can't be extended.
Well, you can't extend it forever.
You can't do it forever. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think with 502 and,
The 502 changes everything else. We need to look at how that all works together. I think that's a reasonable way to go.
Any last comments on that one? Okay, let's take up Agenda Bill 3213, setting a public hearing for the purposes of discussing medical marijuana and collective garden moratorium extension.
Do we need to read the bill by title only?
Nope, this is just setting the hearing.
So move.
Second.
I've got a motion and a second. Any additional discussion? Dave?
I'd love to make it for 12 months instead of 6. That way we're not, that way we're not coming back time and time and time again. Because at some point, somebody's going to say to us, you've extended this thing X number of times, and the X number is going to be what they're going to attack. So heck,
state laws, you can extend it for 6 months.
You
The
could
first
do
time was
one 12-month,
year.
which we've already done, and so now we're on the 6-month cycle.
We appreciate the enthusiasm.
Yes.
Yeah, I tried that last time.
Yes.
So I remember it well.
it amazes me the number of issues on which the state tells us what we can do.
Yeah.
Thank you, Don.
And then the
Okay, so I've
federal
got-
government tells us what we cannot do.
I've got a motion and a second to set the public hearing for our next council meeting. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, with that brings us to the second opportunity in the agenda for anyone from the public that would like to address council.
Boy, a lot of people tonight.
Okay, I'm not going to ask twice.
Oh, no.
Moving to mayor's report, I have 3 items for you. The first one, Ryan, it's nice that you're here this evening. Got a letter from the Department of Ecology. Dear Mayor Guard, City of Washougal, congratulations. The City of Washougal Wastewater Treatment Plant is receiving the 2012 Wastewater Treatment Plant Outstanding Performance Award. Washington State Department of Ecology will issue a press release recognizing the award recipients and include the City of Washougal Wastewater Treatment Plant in that. Our staff evaluated wastewater treatment plants in Washington for compliance with effluent limits, monitoring and reporting requirements, spill prevention planning, pretreatment, and overall operation demands of the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System permit. Of approximately 300 wastewater treatment plants statewide, yours is one of only 107 that achieved full compliance with its permit in 2012. It takes diligent operators and a strong management team working effectively together to achieve this high level of compliance. It is not easy to operate a wastewater treatment plant 24 hours a day, 365 days a year without any violations. Ecology appreciates the extraordinary level of effort your plant operators demonstrated throughout 2012. Talented and proficient operators are critical to successful plant operations and protecting the health of Washington's waters. Your excellent record proves that dedicated operators run the award-winning City of Washougal wastewater treatment plant, and their combined efforts lead to outstanding compliance. Thank you for your excellent service that you provide, and congratulations sincerely, Kelly Susswind, Water Quality Program Manager for the Department of Ecology. Ryan, thank you very much for the efforts of yourself and your entire staff down there. I told you I was going to read that. You might have dressed differently.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
It's all good.
Just one question. How many years have we won this award now?
Ryan, how many years? How many consecutive years?
I think it's 3 consecutive, isn't it?
We missed one. I think we missed 2011.
So how many total?
Total? 6 or 7.
Congratulations.
That's great.
Nothing like consistent performance.
Good stuff. Second item, the She-Tran Board Composition Meeting is tomorrow afternoon at 4 p.m. down at the Vancouver Main Library. That meeting runs, it's scheduled from 4 o'clock until 5:30. We are anticipating and hopeful from the packets that we've got that at that meeting, most of the answers to the questions that we've asked the staff and legal counsel will be given and understood, hopefully understood. And at that point, I would anticipate that we will have some proposals coming forth for each member of that group to bring back to our individual cities and see at our next meeting where you all may want to have us go with that potential composition. So that's tomorrow at 4 o'clock. And then just a reminder, this Saturday, there is the Port Concert on the 17th down at Marina Park at 6 o'clock in the evening. Councilmember Sprint.
Mr. Mayor, before we jump to that, just item D under discussion was to feel from the council on the September town hall date and topic. Trying to plan ahead for that if we could.
Yep.
What were you thinking about budget?
We have in your rules, you prescribed a November town hall for the budget. And so that flows nicely with your deliberations regarding the budget. So I had targeted November for that based on that. That doesn't mean it couldn't be.
What about water rates? When do we get that report?
She will be here on September 23rd, which is your last meeting in September. And so there's a Saturday, the 28th, comes after that. Your rules say that there will be a town hall meeting in September. It doesn't say which one. You wanted the flexibility to pick date and topic. The only topic that gelled at the staff level was around your strategic goal pillar of community engagement and around volunteerism and volunteer opportunities, particularly here at the city with the various boards and commissions that we have, and inviting representatives from those groups to come here and explain what they do, invite members of the community to come to learn about what all of those opportunities are and to try to generate interest in those important positions that we have. It's just an idea. Apparently that's been done in the past and had some fruit just in terms of getting some interest so that when future vacancies come up, there's kind of a list of folks that have already expressed interest. But there's any myriad of topics, as you can imagine. There's so much going on that we want to make sure it's what you want to do.
Well, we felt tonight like there was so much information with the water rate study. I think it'd be so appropriate to be able to have an entire what, 3 hours we usually dedicate, or is it 2?
3.
To have just heard the presentation. Of course, our city administrator will have it all figured out, and he'll be able to have all of the questions that we have answered. Just consider that.
Do it before or after the workshop?
Oh, yeah, she would come on that Monday night, and then it'd be the following Saturday, it sounds like.
If you would like
If we-
to, the purpose of the town halls is to hear from our neighbors about an issue, any issue, really. However, you wanted to have a kickoff or a starter topic for the town halls, but what you would hear from our neighbors isn't devoted only to that, but that could be our starter topic. Karen will be here on the 23rd. There'll be a lot of information on the 23rd. We don't have her scheduled to come for a Saturday, but we could certainly handle it as staff. And if you would like to hear from our neighbors about their thoughts on what comes out of that September 23rd workshop and what some of the different options and choices are, that would be a topic.
It's a pretty hot topic.
Paul?
On community engagement, one of the things that I'd kind of like to have a discussion with the community about is how can we actually communicate with them? How do people feel about banners? How do people feel about reader boards? How do people feel about going back to stuffed envelopes and newsletters and utility bills? None of those are cost-free, and so it seems to me that it makes sense to find out from people what they think would be valuable. If you look at the data on the city website, the people don't go there. I've given the number before that the last time I knew, the total reach of the Post-Record and the Columbian into our city was 28%, and I would assume it's gone down from that because that number is 5 years old. So how do you reach people? How do you communicate with people? And I would really like to hear from people how they would like to be communicated with, what they thought would be effective.
Other suggestions, other thoughts, comments?
I would concur with utility rights as our discussion. Saturday after our workshop.
So go for the 28th?
Yeah, I think.
I really like to have a discussion on volunteerism, but that's not a deadline topic. Whereas this is a looming deadline that's of great importance to the city.
It would be great if we could combine the two, because I think that it would be awfully hard to get a lot of people for the volunteerism.
Exactly.
On the other hand, if we do utility rates, we'll get people in the door.
Yeah.
Okay, so tandem topics, and invite representatives from the different boards and commissions and committees so they can share just briefly about the opportunity that they have as a volunteer. Okay. I think
for
it's also
now-
a chance to recognize them as well, for the council to recognize
That'd be
them.
nice.
For now, let's pencil out Saturday, September 28th from 9 to noon. And we'll start working on a schedule. Okay, with that, Brent?
I just wanted to compliment staff and the administration on excellent work on the utility rates. I mean, this is much better than I ever expected. At least it appears that it's heading in that direction, and I wanted to compliment you on the excellent work that you've done.
Thank you. Karen?
Nothing tonight.
Paul?
Two things. I just wanted to mention that along with the port concerts, there'll be community events beginning at 2:30. Things like sack races and hopefully, unless they get called away by an actual emergency, the Coast Guard is going to bring a rescue helicopter out and put a rescue swimmer in the water and pull somebody out of the river right in front of the port. And that I forget when that's scheduled, but I think it's 3:30, but it might be 4:30. But the sack races start at 2:30. Chris Lloyd Band comes on at 6. Johnny Limo and the Lugnuts from 8:30 until 10. I was there last year and a good time was had by all. I highly recommend it. And a bit more kind of wonky thing. I will be in Spokane Valley tomorrow and Wednesday for the Association of Washington Cities Member Expo. The reason that I'm there actually is to represent the Board of Trustees for the Employee Benefits Trust. So the EBT will be paying my expenses for that, not the city. But while I'm there, there will be a number of seminars and vendors, which may be of more interest to the staff than they are to me. If you would look through and see if there are any sessions that you would like information from, they may have a vendor list. If there's anything that you would want from the vendors, I would be happy to do all of that.
Yes, on Sunday, there's a West Columbia Gorge Humane Society Dog and Pony Show that's to raise funds for our Humane Society to be held down in the empty lot areas next to Bi-Mart. So please don't forget to come out there on Sunday afternoon. That's it.
Dave? Kind of show?
C-Tran tomorrow night,
5:30?
5:30, following your show. Are you gonna? Can you tell us what it is that you're asking the board, your board of, can you tell us tonight what you're going to recommend to the board?
I'm not. I believe there are 2 or 3 proposals that are going to come forth from other folks who were already posturing to make them, so
Do you have a preference?
let's see where it goes tomorrow. It's been a month for people to percolate on them, and quite frankly, one of them came out as a surprise at the last meeting anyway, so
Oh,
we'll see if that's caught any fire or not.
yeah.
I would think under the way the discussions are going right now, the 2 main proposals that have been put forth, frankly, give Washougal their own seat. So I think the biggest questions that are left remaining is, what does that mean when it gets to you all as a board? Because you still have to, the C-Tran board still has to amend its bylaws, do all that, or can choose not to. And therein is the question. So,
After all that work, we can still say no.
but there'll be more to come out of, I'm sure, tomorrow's, and we have one more meeting scheduled, and it may have another meeting beyond that, depending on what comes out of tomorrow and if anybody feels good. But our push was to make sure that we had one more meeting in there so that we literally could all bring it back to the individual communities and find out what councils wanted to do and move from there. So as soon as we have that, we'll get it put into enough of a report that you all get it in advance.
Good.
With that, I would entertain a motion for adjournment. We are adjourned.
Jennifer.